Petra is like a treasure for Jordan, you know? We don't have oil in this country, but we have Petra. So that's how they say. It is our oil. Tourism in general is our 13%. 13% of the national income comes from tourism. That's big. So the last 2 years we were suffering even. This the most, maybe one of the most sectors that suffering in this country and around the world in tourism. And it took a time to pick up again. Maybe you heard the same in Israel. Yeah. They also depend on that. Same everywhere. Yeah. Same everywhere. Travel was not possible. Now, thank God, we're working since 2 months. It's back to not normal, but we're happy with it. Very happy. And hopefully it will continue. We have good bookings next fall. Starting from fall, will be really crowded. You know, the fall before COVID, Petra recorded the highest number of visitors in 1 year and the highest number of visitors in 1 day in October 2019. We reached 1 million, we exceeded 1 million per year, and that day I think 7,000 were inside Petra. You didn't want to be there. I was there. It's really, you stand near the treasury, you only see heads of people. Now we have the service industry, they call it, the service, which is basically collecting customs. That's what the country, the budget of this country depends on. Of course, agriculture is great, agriculture, and we export many of our vegetables to the nearby markets, like in Saudi Arabia, Dubai. That's a good also income. We have industry like mining for phosphate and for the potash in the Dead Sea, or extracting the potash from the Dead Sea, and these two are used to make fertilizer. So we also produce fertilizer, as we export finished products and also the raw material. This area, thank you for asking, and this area was once part of the biblical kingdom of Edom. The Edomites. I like, with the biblical tours, usually I like to explain at some point when we mention names, to tell you what the meaning of these names were in the ancient languages. So maybe sometimes it makes more sense to see why they call it like this or that. Some areas, even names of people. Yeah, it's interesting to know why they call it like that. Yes, Yitzhak, for example, Isaac. Because he's not called Isaac, you know. In his own language, it's called Yitzhak. Yitzhak, yeah. In Arabic we say Ishaq, but the verb for to laugh in Arabic is Yadhak. Yadhak. And actually the name Isaac means to laugh. If you read in the Bible, go back to laugh. Jacob. Well, we don't call him Jacob here, we call him Yaakov. In Hebrew is Yaakov. In Arabic is Yaqub. Both Hebrew and Arabic, by the way. Arabic is what we speak here, Hebrew is what they speak in Israel. They are related languages to Aramaic, which is the language that Jesus spoke. In the time of Jesus, they spoke in the streets, they spoke Aramaic. They read the verses from the Old Testament, the Torah, they will use ancient Hebrew, right? So it's Yaakov means the one who follows the other. Remember, Yaakov was the twin brother with Esau. Esau was the firstborn. So Jacob came dropping the heels of his brother, as the Bible describes it. So he was called Jacob because of that. Come after his brother. But every name has a meaning. Jesus, they didn't call him Jesus. The people would call him and say Yeshua. Yeshua in Aramaic. In Arabic today we say Yeshua. Yeshua al-Masih. What does that mean? Jesus Christ. The Messiah. Jesus Christ. So Yeshua or Yeshua, which is the same name of Joshua in Aramaic, Yeshua. Yeah, God saves. God saves or delivers. So that's how we in our language we are closer to the ancient Aramaic, so we may understand the name faster than guys in English. So unless if somebody understand the meaning of the name, I mean, sorry, because of the language, of course, we use. So back to this area, it's called Wadi Rum. And it was part of Edom, the ancient land of Edom in the Bible. Adom in Hebrew, Adom means red. In Hebrew, the word means red. And the whole area where Petra is, where this desert is, it looks reddish in color. Maybe it's the color of the area, but maybe also it's the color of Esau. Because the Edomites described in the Genesis as the descendants of Esau. And Esau, the Bible says, he has red skin. And so he may have something to do with the name of the Edom or the Edomites. So this is one of the kingdoms that were on this part of the Holy Land during the Old Testament. Edom, or Edom here, north of Edom, and we will be there the day after tomorrow, was the land of Moab, the Moabites. Ruth was from Moab, yes. We will be in the land of Ruth when we go to Madaba, Mount Nebo. And then we go further north to the land of Ammon, the Ammonites. That's where Amman, our capital, is, and that's where the name Amman comes from. Actually, Amman comes from the word Ammon, the Ammonites. Then the last day of your trip, before heading back to the border, the north border this time, is the land of Gilead. Or it's a geographical land rather than a kingdom back then, Gilead. So we have three kingdoms back in the Old Testament times, Ammon, Moab, and Edom, on this part of the Holy Land, all in Jordan, all in Jordan. And then to the north we have the land of Gilead. So we will be in all these lands, biblical lands, during your tour here. We start from the south, from Edom, from the Edomites. Yeah, Jacob went to his uncle, if that's your question. Jacob, when he took the blessing of his father, remember that? You know what? I'm going to show you the last day where Jacob wrestled with the angel on the banks of the river Yabuk or Jabok. Yeah, Jabok. You call it Jabok. It's in Aramaic Yabuk. Yabuk. It is on our way to Jarash that day. Genesis 32. It's when Jacob wrestled with the angel, and his name was changed, right? So to Israel, exactly. So the first time you read the word Israel in the Bible was in Jordan. And it was not a country, by the way, my friends. It's important to learn while you are here. It was a person, right? Jacob was Israel. anyone who descends from Jacob, they call them the Israelites back in the Old Testament. Today we call the country of Israel and the people in Israel, we say Israelis, just to distinguish. Is there a difference between Israel, then now and back then? We think there was, yeah, there is a big difference. Now the country has many people, even Christians and Muslims, and even the Jewish communities have their own issues between them, the background. So we're talking Israelites when we talk about the Old Testament, right? It's descendants of Jacob, whether they have something to do or not with some people today. So in that place where Jacob was renamed Israel, Israel. What's El? Is God. Israel. We say in today's language, we say Yasra. Yasra means to defeat in battle, or to defeat in wrestling, or something, to put down on the ground. Yasra. So yes, Yisrael, they say in the Hebrew. Israel. Okay. As the Bible tells us in Genesis 32, is to struggle with God and prevail or survive, and that's how we think where we think the name comes from. Israel, the name of Jacob after that wrestling. I will show you the river when the wrestling took place. I will not act like, tour guides make up stories and things. I will not show you the stone where he stood and his footprint on the bank of the river. I'll skip that, okay? I'll show you the river. It's just the river, and part of skipping the rocks. Look at the view of Wadi now from a distance on the right side. So it's too far inside. It goes for about 20 miles. Stretch the Wadi itself, surrounded with mountains on both sides. And it reaches the Saudi Arabian border. So from here, you go east, that's on your right, that's where the Saudi Arabian border will be. The sand dunes that you see near the mountains here, they keep changing location. They just move with the wind. And this time of the year, we expect sandstorm. It is a period of time we call it Hamasini weather. This is the land of, we were talking about the land where Israel was called Israel. You asked me where Jacob went when he struggled with his brother, or he was afraid that when his brother comes back from his hunting trip, that he might kill him because of what he did. So he went east to Mesopotamia, where Iraq is. That is his uncle was his uncle Laban or Laban. I try to pronounce the name for you just to compare. Laban, he lived with his uncle for a while. He married his cousins. He married his two cousins, Leah and Rachel, and the two servants. He became with big family and lots of positions. After 20 years, he decides to go back with his father. That's when he stopped at the river Jacob. Jacob stopped at Jacob. And he waited for his brother to come and meet him on the banks of that river, and he came forgiving him rather than fighting with him. Coming from the south, probably from the south, not necessarily from this desert, maybe the area more toward Petra, which is more. So see there is a high mountain now appearing even with the sand. You see the summit. Big mountain. That's part of Wadi, the whole part of Wadi. account, and where he climbed the mountain, of course, a high mountain there. You go to Sinai, you need to start very early in the morning, like 1 or 2 in the a.m. to be able to climb the mountain with sunset, the beautiful sunset on the top. It's called Mount Sinai. That's different from Mount Nebo, where we will take you here in Jordan. Yeah, long way, and it's two different stories. The one in Egypt, where the 10 commandments were given, where the tabernacle, with the burning bush account, and the one in Jordan is where Moses died. That will be on our plan for the day after tomorrow. The highlight, I would say, of that, besides going to some other parts in the land of Moab before going to also. So many biblical events from the Old Testament that happened in this area, or in this specific area. The Edomites, all the stories about the Edom and the Edomites, that's what we can say. If you like to think of this area as a larger area where Petra is, and where these mountains were all part of the same kingdom at that time, Jesus' time. This was called, back in Jesus' time, it was called Arabia. And who came to Arabia in the Bible? Can you tell us I went to Arabia? Paul. Paul in Galatians chapter 1. Remember Paul, before his conversion, because seeing the Lord on the way to Damascus, he was Saul, the persecutor, the Pharisee, the persecutor of Christians, right? And he was on his way to Damascus actually to persecute, or to, so on the road to Damascus, the Lord appeared to him, and he recognized him, but he lost his sight. He was told by the Lord to go to this guy in Damascus, right? So he went there, he got back his sight, but he couldn't leave the city because he became a wanted man after his the story was told. So they had to put him in a basket and send him down from one of the windows of the walls of the city to like sneak him outside the city. And he said in Galatians chapter 1, after I left Damascus, I didn't go back to Jerusalem where the brothers were, but I went to Arabia. So he didn't mean Saudi Arabia, but that was not a country at that time. It was called Arabia, yes, the Arabian desert, but the kingdom that was called Arabia was the kingdom of the people of Petra. It was called the Nabatean kingdom. The name of those people were Nabateans, and their capital was Petra, so their kingdom was bigger than Petra, much bigger. It included parts of Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, South Israel, even Damascus at some point. So, Paul chapter 1, verse 17. I went to Arabia, right? So, thank you for the verse. I lose the verses sometimes, but I can remember the chapters, which is good. I don't know. Galatians 1:17. The biblical scholars think that he spent 3 years in Arabia. 3 years, he said in the Bible, he spent 3 years before he gets back to Jerusalem to meet with Peter in Jerusalem for the first time after his conversion. But the scholars believe he spent 2 of the 3 years in Arabia. He never mentioned he was in Petra. But I guess if he was in Arabia for 2 years, then Petra was the main city in Arabia. So maybe he was in Petra being the main city in Arabia. because he was also a wanted man, at that time. So Petra, if you look in the Bible, you will not find the name Petra in the Bible. It was not mentioned under that name in the Bible, though the area was mentioned under many names in the Bible, but not Petra. What does Petra mean? Rock. Like, remember Peter, Pietros, you are the rock, you are Peter. In Greek, the rock means Peter, or translates as Peter. So Petra is the name of the area that has many rocks, or the big rock, if you will, which was the same meaning of the name of that city in the own language of the people who built it. People who built it called it Rakim, Rakim or Rakim. Rakim or Rakim means the big rock. In Hebrew, we have a reference in 2 Kings about a place called Selah. Selah. It's different from the one used in Psalms. Selah. Selah. That's not really with a meaning, just a sound. But Selah means rock in Hebrew. So the Greek historians, when they wanted to say that I went to this rock, the city called the Rock, they put it in Greek. So they say, we went to Petra. In their own language, it was Petra. So it became known as Petra, as a city mentioned by those historians. In this town here, we are passing a Bedouin community. And you may ask me, Bedouins are supposed to live in tents. That's true, yeah. That's the school, the 3-story building back there with the flag on it. That's the school. One of the schools, actually, because every town has more than a school. Why? The education in Jordan here in government schools is not mixed. So the boys are kicked out of the school after 4th grade to another school. So the girls continue in the same school. If they have also a bigger community, there will be a different building for elementary and secondary school. So yeah, every town has these services. Now we have something that we are proud of in this country. That's another school with the solar panel. So education is one of the things we are proud of, the statistics of the education in this country. 98% of the children at school age, they go to school. Except the women and the men in these villages, you may see them with a traditional dress, or a little bit of that traditional dress, like for men sometimes see the head cover, the red and white usually, or plain white, or black and white. In the north we have some. Today you may see that head cover with a guy wearing a blue jeans. That's fine. Our king, the photo of our king, you sometimes see him in a suit with a head cover. So it's the traditional thing here is to have the dress, which is a fluffy white dress or brownish dress of the men, and then the head cover. That's the traditional dress for men. For the ladies, yes, the black dress is the famous one. Sometimes you'll see it with lots of embroidery on it, the beautiful designs of embroidery. Yesterday was the first day of the holy month for Muslims called Ramadan. So Jordan they started yesterday. Other countries they started 2 days ago. Well, Ramadan, it's a lunar month in the Arabic calendar. So it has 12 months. And like we use the solar calendar, the Gregorian calendar we are using. But the Muslims still use the Arabian calendar. Like also the Jews, they use the Jewish calendar, which is also lunar, the lunar calendar. In lunar calendar, the month is 29 or 30 days. Can't be more than 30 days. But it depends whether 29 or 30. The decisive thing is to see the crescent moon in the sky. The birth of it was beautiful crescent last night, so it was the birth of the crescent moon, which means this is the first day of a new month in a Muslim calendar, or a lunar calendar. When the moon is full moon, this is the middle of the month, and then it starts disappearing, but it is born again from the other side. So it's important for Muslims, the crescent moon, the symbol which you see on some flags, on the mosques, maybe like a circle on top of it. This is a crescent moon. It's important in deciding the religious occasions, including the beginning of this month. So the name of the month, this month, the name of it is Ramadan. It's the name of a month, like we say April. It's in the Muslim or Arabian calendar, it is called Ramadan. And in Islam, they announced this month as a fasting month. So it existed before it. Okay? Some countries, every country today, every country depends on people to come and witness to the court that they saw the crescent moon. So they announced the start of the fasting. Here in Jordan, they couldn't see it on Friday. Yeah, was it Friday? Yeah, I think Saturday. Yeah, Friday evening. They watched it, couldn't see it. So they announced Saturday as not a fasting day in Jordan. Other countries, they have witnesses, they saw the moon, but scientifically speaking, they say that it could not be seen on Saturday, only on Saturday, or the evening of Saturday, which is Sunday, like the Jewish day. The start of a day for a Jewish day is the sunset. Right? Sunset means the start of a new day. So today is the second day of the fasting of the month of Ramadan. So the Christianity is not Friday. very moderate Muslim, and he always like to represent what we think is the real people who like to live peacefully, and most Muslims do that. But unfortunately, the louder voice will be for the extremists always in any religion. We even have dark periods in our history as Christians at some point in history, and maybe still in some areas. But yeah, he represents that moderate part, and we're together on the fight against the extremists. Our boys are fighting also ISIS. We lost many of them. They are Muslims fighting the extremists. Maybe you didn't know that. But there are Muslims who are fighting ISIS and fighting Al-Qaeda and all the extremists. And part of them is our army and our team. So it's good to be. Of course, it doesn't mean I live in paradise. We have our problems, of course. We do have issues, we do have problems, but in general, it's much better than many other countries. And we have our churches, we have our schools. Christmas Day in this Muslim country specifically, which is not the case in all Muslim countries, is a national holiday. Yeah, Christmas Day in Jordan is a national holiday. Second day of Christmas is a holiday for Christians. So you take it off as a Christian. Boxing Day. Now, Sundays in Jordan is the beginning of the week, so it's the start of the week. It's a working day. First, before I continue, see the sign I was passing. It says King's Way. King's Way. We took off the main highway, or the desert highway, and we are now on the ancient track. Or part of the ancient track that used to connect north and south of this land. Taking the mountains, not the desert. Take the desert, that's called the wilderness way in ancient days. Later it was called also the Hajj route in the Muslim times, because it is the path of the pilgrimage. Hajj means pilgrims. It's the Hajj route, meaning it's the road taking you to Mecca for Muslims. But the word Hajj in Arabic means pilgrimage. You are in a pilgrimage, on a Hajj to the Holy Land. And it's hard to change religion, or is that to change? Yeah. If you're a Muslim, it's not allowed to change religion officially. By heart, no one knows. But officially, to change the papers, because you have to register your religion in the documents, the civil register. I'll tell you why. If you're a Christian converting to Islam, that's okay. Or let's say non-Muslim converting to Islam, it's okay, welcome. And that's not part of Jordan's issue, it's part of a religion issue rather than one country. And the religion is spreading all over, of course, in many countries. So it's not only in Jordan. So it is part of the registry that will, when you go to register a new family, for example, a marriage, we don't have civil marriages in this country. So you either marry in a church if you're a Christian, or in a Muslim court if you're a Muslim, to register the contract, because marriage contract. So you have to show your ID, which shows your religion, usually, because it's not allowed to have a Christian or a non-Muslim man marrying a Muslim woman. It is allowed for a Muslim man to marry a non-Muslim woman. But there are rules, different rules, and again, these rules are not only in Jordan, but in many countries, which is part of the teachings and how they interpret the teachings in their country. So we don't see many intermarriages in this country between different religions. it causes some issues between families sometimes, especially on the Christian side. From what you have, the idea of a traditional church, but it's because it's a minority, people here, they don't look at these differences in a serious way. Like for example, if you have somebody like a Catholic coming to marry your Orthodox daughter, you don't say no usually, because you have limited option choices. Evangelist with Catholic, that's fine, you know. They can fight at home, but but it's not like an obstacle in forming a new family, unless if you are in a very strict line. So I have many lines in my family, different churches represented in one family, which is okay. We don't fight. It's nice. Most of the Christians in Jordan, if you're asking which church they belong to, traditionally we are mostly Orthodox. Yes, about 50% of the Christians. And we have then the Catholic Church, which is both Roman Catholic and Eastern Catholic. So we have Eastern Catholic rites. And then we have many evangelical churches, yes. More, maybe 10% of the Christians. Oh, in Israel it's different. You mean the Jewish? They call them Messianic Jewish. From Jesus' time, Aramaic. Yes. Well, there are some Christians now, you know, some churches until today, they still speak Aramaic. Or a dialect of the Aramaic. Like, for example, the Syrian church and the Maronite church in Lebanon. That's very close to the Aramaic language. In Syria, I know 3 villages, they still speak pure Aramaic. And these villages became very famous after the movie, The Passion of Christ. You remember that? Mel Gibson? Because in the movie, they were speaking Aramaic, subtitles, but Aramaic language. So, yeah, many of the people who were touched by the movie, they went to these villages to see it. And they were near Damascus. I know one of these villages was suffered a lot from ISIS, but now it's good. I know a guy who visited Syria is now calm, especially the southern part, which we are connected to. My hometown is 15 minutes away from the Syrian border. I live now, it's my birth town, you say. I live now in Amman, our capital, because my work is easier. But my birth town is 15 minutes away from the Syrian border. So when we were kids, they used to take us for a one-day tour to Damascus. Let's go to Damascus. We have lunch, we buy some things, we come back. It's easy. Yeah, these went to the mill for electricity here. Part of a project, a trial project that was sponsored by the European Union to see if we can run this renewable source of energy. And they are moving throughout the year, I would say. They have 300 days a year. They have good wind in many parts of Jordan. And we have also 300 days a year good sun in many parts of Jordan. So we can get solar and we can get also wind energy. Still, those maybe they stopped it for a reason. They stuck it sometimes. They are all moving. Right? The land here can be government land, like these fields where the mills are. It can be also private fields in some areas where, like you see far away, there's some buildings. This is all private land. You can buy it. So the desert mainly, many pieces of land there are not like government land. They have certain, sometimes usage for it, like they rent it for mining. These are in government. These mills are in government. All these mills that you see now, combined together, they produce only a small part of, or a small amount of electricity, and maybe equivalent to one generator with gas. But this is free and clean, so it depends if that matters with the country or not. The environmental part. Jordan is, they say we care, but actually their acts is not. So for example, they increased the price for the solar systems to get it in your home, and also the price of electricity, or to pay for the electricity company if you have a solar panel. But when you hear them on the TV, it's like, we care. But because maybe it's the government maybe policy. Because we have the king and the government. Yeah. Well, the king has some power for appointing a prime minister, but the policies. And I sometimes you don't blame them because it's a country with limited resources, so they depend on taxes and customs to pay the salaries, services, and then when they increase the price of electricity, starting from this month, they have changed that price list for electricity. There's a crescent moon, can you see it? And there is a minaret, which is the tall tower where the loudspeakers are. This was created in the design of the mosque in the ancient days to allow a guy who is called the muezzin, the guy who climbs that tower, to shout before the invention of the loudspeaker, like the tower of the bells in the churches, for the bells to be heard from for a long distance. He would go up, and start shouting on all directions. Usually the mosque in ancient times wasn't in a remote area, it was in the center of the town or a village. So everyone in the village will hear it. That was the idea of the minaret, which now has loudspeakers. Nobody climbs up. It's just part of the design, and the beautiful design. That's the mosque we passed on the left, you see it, with the green dome. And the mosque, if you enter a mosque and see people praying inside, they will all be facing the direction of Mecca, the city of Mecca, which is today in Saudi Arabia, and it's the most holy site for Muslims. That's where they do the pilgrimage. So you should be facing Mecca when you pray, and the mosque is therefore oriented in this part of the world. It's oriented to the south because Mecca is south of it. But if you live in Africa or in China, wherever, America, you have to follow the direction of Mecca. It doesn't have to be south from here. Maybe east or west, it depends on where you are from Mecca. From this country, we have all mosques are oriented south. While, and we will talk about that when we visit some of the Byzantine churches in Mount Nebo, the churches, we're talking about ancient churches and many Eastern churches until today, the Catholic Church until like 100 years ago, they used to orient their churches to the east. The churches were always oriented to the east. Synagogues will be oriented to the Jerusalem, to the main synagogue. So that's how, theologically there's a reason for that. We'll talk about it later. But to your left you can see the mountains of Petra and on your left hand side. That's see that mountain which looks like a camel hump standing on the left of that summit. To the right of it there's a higher point, like the highest peak that you see from here. It's where we believe Aaron, the brother of Moses, was buried. And Numbers chapter 20, we read it happened on the border of Edom, a mountain called Hor, Mount Hor. And actually in Hebrew, it is called, the Hebrew Torah, it's called Hor Hahar, which means the peak over peaks. Simply like saying this is the highest peak. So Hor was not a name of the mountain in Hebrew. It's a description of it, like a summit. When it's translated to English and when it's translated even to Arabic, we say Mount Hor. It's like saying this is the mountain of the peak. Also in Arabic we say Jabal Hor. Don't worry, we will get close to it. We will get closer to it, but you can have a glimpse of it now. From this side, this is where that summit that looks like a camel hump. Straight there. Near the borders of Edom, the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, Aaron will be gathered to his people, he will not enter the land I give to the Israelites, because both of you rebelled against my command at the waters of Meribah. Get Aaron and his son Eleazar and take them up Mount Hor. Remove Aaron's garments and put them on his son Eleazar, for Aaron will be gathered to his people, he will die there. Moses did as the Lord commanded. So there's the mountain range. We will get to that, closer to that mountain, so you can see it better in a better way. That's where Aaron, Moses and Eleazar, the son of Aaron, went up. Although there is a site in north, between the border of Egypt and Israel, near the sea, the Mediterranean Sea, that they also think that is Mount Hor. So, two sites. This site here follows a very early tradition. I don't know if you heard of this historian, and you will hear his name many times in this trip, Josephus. Flavius Josephus. He is a Jewish historian, writing around 90 AD. So the end of the 1st century AD, very close to Jesus' time, but still far from Aaron's time, Moses' time. But he wrote, at least from that century, he wrote that Mount Hor is near Petra. So in his time, this was the tradition. In Jesus' time, that Mount Hor, or the tomb of Aaron, is this one, here in this land. On top of that mountain, I've been there many times, and I've been there with the group that excavated a big monastery on top of the mountain. They were from the University of Helsinki in Finland, and the professor was, his name was Jakob Rosen. He's from Finland, so he's he's a lovely guy. He's an expert in Greek language. He's not an archaeologist at all. He is an expert in the language. And his interest in this mountain came from a discovery that was done here in 1993 in the church of Petra, the old church of Petra. We found what was a big discovery back then, about 90 scrolls of papyrus paper written on them like a scroll, and they were carbonized in one of the rooms of the church because of a fire that took place. So imagine you have a rack full of these rolls of paper and they were under fire, and then the dust starts coming down, so it covered those racks, and they found it like that. So it's like when you burn paper, you touch it and you will just lose it. Yeah? So they came with this professor from the United States. She was, forget her name, but she came here, and they have Professor Frozen also from Helsinki University to try to unfold it in a certain way. It took them years, and it was sponsored by you guys through the American Center of Oriental Research, ACOR. It's called ACOR. And they have a big office in Amman, one of my favorite libraries in Amman. They have inside the center. Yeah, there are people still going to libraries, like me. I love paperwork. Yeah. So it was years of work. They came up with a translation of all documents, which was an amazing work they did. One of the documents talks about a property on the summit where the high priest was dead. So the high priest was a title for Aaron, and we knew from locals that the tradition, they have a shrine there, Muslim shrine only from recent years. So he decided he convinced his university to do an excavation up there, and they found a big monastery. 2 churches were discovered, and the name Aaron appears on one of them. So that was an important excavation, and I was there for 2 days with them. It's hard to reach up there. We used to bring them supplies, or they used to send them supplies on donkeys, like in the old days, water, but they camped up there. They had some solar stuff. Important. Depends on the season, actually. These trees that you see, you will see many, especially when you go north, you see many farmers selling their crops on the road, or what is left after they load the trucks. They put it on the roadside, they sell it. This town is called Aibe, and it is about 10 minutes away from Wadi Musa, where Petra is. So we're not far from Petra. We will go to a restaurant there, a nice restaurant called Al-Qantara. I think it's time for lunch, right?
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll go there straight there, and they have a nice buffet style food with some local dishes included in the buffet. Besides the traditional international ones like the pasta or vegetables, you will find some local dishes also. And one of them will be cooked outside the door, so it's like chicken sajini, chicken with vegetables cooked in a big tray. You will see it. It is served with the buffet also as well. But you can see while they are cooking. So even though it is Ramadan, most Muslims are fasting, but in Petra, usually in tourist places, you will find many restaurants open and providing service to our visitors. But if you go to Amman, for example, McDonald's and these things in the big city, they are closed. Closed, but they do delivery. Or you just drive through. But you can't sit down and do it. Yeah, I remember my grandfather, he had some small shop. He used to close all Sunday, so it doesn't open. Then he started like closing Sunday morning and opening the afternoon. Now they open it. At night it's nice, yeah, it's very nice. The temperature. People, because summer nights are nice here, people in many parts of Jordan, they stay awake for a long time. I mean, you can do shopping at 12 in the evening in Amman. It's not only 7-Eleven, but everywhere. There's no closing time for shops. Only the big shopping malls have set the time because they have many shops inside. Like 11 or 12 in the summer. They open like 9, no, they take shifts. But in the summer, it's many visitors from Arab countries are expected. Many Jordanians who work abroad are expected to come for vacations. Summer schools also in the summer. So it's a big business for these shops. And people like to stay for late. In Ramadan, by the way, this time of the year, because the Muslims or the businesses are not open through the day, like coffee shops and these, they open after sunset and they stay until sunrise. Yes. Well, not necessarily loud, but it's business here for them. Because also employees in the government or in private companies, they go later to their work. For example, government workers go at 10 o'clock instead of 8. Yeah, shorter day, same salary. About 9 o'clock. See that? Or actually like 10 o'clock. The summit, the highest summit, the little white building. The highest point in Petra. That's a Muslim shrine. The white building. The Muslims also believe in Harun as a man of God. Just like Moses. Also, they believe in Moses. Musa in Arabic. So that's Mount 4, we think. You see the white building? Yes, clearly. The white dome, like a dome. On top of the highest peak. The highest peak is now straight, like 9 o'clock, like this. Little building. So you need 6 hours to climb up from your footstep. 5 to 6 hours. One way. We can cheat a little bit, taking a truck to the side of the mountain and then climb. But still, I saw some of you buying scarves or interested in scarves. That's a nice thing. You can get scarves from $5 up. But don't overpay for these things. Like if they tell you they are made from camel hair or whatever golden threads inside. Maybe from 5 to 30, I would say. Something like that. 30 to 50 maximum, but not hundreds, okay? For a scarf. guess they love bargaining in these places, like Petra, like Wadi. As a group, I usually we stop in some rest places which has things priced, which is nice thing to have. So if somebody tell you I give you 50% discount and it has no price on it, you never know what's the start point is, right? There's so many tricks they do, but they all want to do living, of course, at the end, but you know, to be reasonable is good. I like to show you one thing as a group, if you like to do that. When we are at Mount Nebo, the day after tomorrow, we can stop to see how they make mosaics. You want to see that? I'm sure you want to see that. But that's the place where you can see it. That's like a workshop where you see the people working, women and even disabled, some with disability, but they produce the best things you can imagine. Amazing people. If you like to do that, we can do it when we are at Mount Nebo. We'll choose one of the places to see and to learn about the art, and even if you want to buy something, they can give you good deals and also ship it to you if you like to ship it back home. Or if you want to take it back with you to Israel, it's fine, you know, we have no problems with the border crossing with such items.
Yes.
Yes. When we're seated. You're in charge of that.
Amazing of your creation. And we've not seen things like this, like we've seen this morning. Father, we thank you for the devotion of your servants. I thank you for Aaron. I thank you for the place that he's buried. What a joy to be able to put a vision